There are moments in life when silence feels heavier than pain. Moments when you pray and hear nothing. Moments when days turn into weeks, and weeks into months, and you begin asking questions you never thought you would ask. God, where are you? Do you still see me? Did you forget me? Maybe you have felt this before. Maybe you are feeling it right now. You wake up carrying burdens no one sees. You smile around people while fighting battles in secret. You continue moving through life, but deep inside your heart feels tired. Not physically tired, soul tired. Because disappointment has a way of exhausting us. Waiting has a way of exhausting us. Unanswered prayers have a way of exhausting us. And perhaps the hardest part is not the pain itself. Perhaps the hardest part is wondering if heaven has become silent because heaven has forgotten your name. But today, hear this truth carefully. God has not forgotten you. Not for one day. Not for one moment. Not for 1 second. Because the God who created the stars does not lose track of his children. Sometimes we believe that if God truly cared, life would always be easy. We assume that if God remembered us, there would be no delays, no tears, no confusion, and no waiting seasons. But God's presence is not measured by comfort. God's faithfulness is not measured by immediate answers. Because even when God seems silent, he is still working. There are seasons when heaven feels quiet not because God is absent, but because God is preparing something greater than what you can currently understand. Think about a painter standing inches away from a giant canvas. From that close, the colors may seem random. The brush strokes may appear confusing. Nothing seems organized. But step back, and suddenly the picture becomes clear. Many times in life, we stand too close to our pain. We stand too close to disappointment. We stand too close to uncertainty. And because of that, we cannot yet see what God is creating. We only see broken pieces. God sees the masterpiece. We only see tears. God sees healing. We only see delay. God sees preparation. We only see the valley. God sees the mountain waiting ahead. You may feel forgotten because your prayers have not yet been answered. You may feel forgotten because the miracle has not happened. You may feel forgotten because the door remains closed. But delay is not abandonment. Silence is not absence. And waiting is not rejection. There were people throughout Scripture who probably felt forgotten too. Noah waited. Abraham waited. Joseph waited. David waited. Even people chosen by God experienced long seasons where heaven seemed quiet. Joseph dreamed of greatness but then found himself betrayed, rejected, falsely accused, and imprisoned. Imagine the questions he must have asked. God, you gave me a dream. Why does my reality look so different? Lord, did you forget your promise? Year after year passed. Darkness. Waiting. Silence. But God had not forgotten Joseph. God was positioning him, preparing him, strengthening him, building him. Because sometimes while we ask God to change our situation, God is changing us. And often that hidden work becomes more important than the visible miracle. Because God sees who you are becoming, not just where you are going. And perhaps right now you feel like Joseph. You feel stuck, forgotten, overlooked. You wonder why everyone else seems to be moving while your life feels paused. But remember this: a pause is not the end of the story. God still writes beautiful stories in hidden places. Sometimes the greatest chapters are written where nobody can see. Because God's work underground always happens before growth above ground. Roots grow before fruit appears. Preparation happens before purpose becomes visible. And if God seems silent right now, perhaps He is not ignoring you. Perhaps He is preparing something your current eyes cannot yet see. Because God does not forget His children. He never has. And He never will. One of the greatest struggles in faith is learning to trust God when we cannot feel Him. Because if we are honest, many of us have experienced seasons where God felt distant. We prayed but heard no answer. We cried but saw no change. We waited but nothing moved. And slowly, a painful thought entered our minds. Maybe God forgot me. Not because we wanted to believe it, but because pain has a way of making silence feel personal. And if you have ever felt that way, you are not alone. Many people believe faith means always feeling strong, always feeling close to God, always feeling peace. But real faith often looks very different. Real faith sometimes cries. Real faith sometimes questions. Real faith sometimes walks through darkness. Because faith is not pretending pain does not exist. Faith is trusting God even when pain does exist. Think about a child walking through a storm with his father. The child may be afraid. The child may not understand where they are going. The thunder may feel terrifying. The darkness may feel overwhelming. But if the father is still holding the child's hand, then the child is never truly alone. And maybe that is where you are today. You feel the storm. You feel the fear. You feel uncertainty. But you cannot feel God's hand. So you assume He is gone. Yet feelings can lie. Because God has never promised that you would always feel His presence. He promised He would always be with you. There is a difference. Because feelings change. Emotions change. Circumstances change. But God does not. The same God who stood beside you in your best moments stands beside you in your worst moments too. The same God who carried you yesterday still carries you today. The same God who opened doors before still holds your future now. You may not feel Him, but He has not moved. Imagine the sun hidden behind heavy clouds. On dark days it can seem as if the sun disappeared. The sky becomes gray. The light becomes faint. And for a moment, it feels absent. But the clouds never removed the sun. They only blocked your view of it. Likewise, pain can cloud our vision. Disappointment can cloud our vision. Fear can cloud our vision. But none of those things remove God. They only make Him harder to see. And maybe today you have clouds over your heart. Clouds of grief. Clouds of anxiety. Clouds of disappointment. Clouds of loneliness. Clouds of waiting. But God is still there. Behind every tear. Behind every unanswered question. Behind every sleepless night. Still present. Still listening. Still working. Still loving you. Sometimes we think if God remembered us, He would remove every struggle immediately. But many times God does not remove the storm because He wants us to discover that His presence is stronger than the storm. Because peace is not the absence of trouble. Peace is knowing who stands beside you in trouble. There are battles you survived only because God quietly carried you. Moments you almost gave up. Moments you nearly broke. Moments you thought you had no strength left. Yet somehow you kept going. Somehow you kept breathing. Somehow you kept standing. That was not luck. That was grace. Because many times God carries us without announcing it. He protects us without us realizing it. He sustains us without us seeing it. And one day you may look back and discover that God was closest during the season you thought He was farthest away. Because heaven's silence does not mean heaven forgot you. And God's hiddenness does not mean God's absence. You may feel forgotten, but feelings do not write truth. God does. And His truth says, you are seen. You are loved. You are remembered. You are still held in His hands. And God never forgets what He holds. One day, you will look back at this season of your life and realize something beautiful. God never forgot you. Not when you cried alone. Not when you waited in silence. Not when your prayers seemed unanswered. Not when your heart felt heavy. Not when your faith became weak. Not even during the moments you wondered if He was still there. Because God does not walk away when life becomes difficult. People may leave. Dreams may fall apart. Plans may change. But God remains. Always. Sometimes we think being forgotten means nobody sees our pain. Nobody notices our struggle. Nobody understands our tears. But Scripture reminds us that God sees what others miss. He sees the tears you hide from people. He sees the prayers you whisper at night. He sees the burdens you carry silently. He sees the battles you never talk about. He sees everything. And not one tear escapes His attention. Think about that for a moment. Out of billions of people in this world, the Creator of the universe knows your heart. He knows your fears. He knows your wounds. He knows the questions you are afraid to say out loud. And He knows the parts of your story that nobody else understands. You are not invisible to Him. You are not forgotten by Him. You are not lost to Him. Sometimes we imagine God standing far away, watching us struggle from a distance. But that is not who He is. God enters pain. God walks into brokenness. God sits beside hurting people. He comes near to the weary, near to the lonely, near to the exhausted, near to those who feel forgotten. Perhaps that is why some of God's greatest work happens in broken places. Because brokenness removes illusions. Brokenness teaches surrender. Brokenness reminds us that our hope was never supposed to rest in people, money, plans, or circumstances. Our hope rests in Him. And maybe today your heart feels tired. Maybe you have spent months carrying disappointment. Maybe you have prayed the same prayer over and over. Maybe you are asking, Lord, how much longer? If that is you, hear this. Do not quit now. Do not stop praying. Do not stop believing. Do not walk away in the middle of your story. Because God often moves in ways we never expect. Sometimes while you think heaven is silent, heaven is arranging things you cannot see. Sometimes while you think nothing is changing, God is changing everything. And one day you will understand what today feels impossible to understand. One day you will see why certain doors closed, why certain people left, why certain seasons hurt, why certain prayers took so long. And on that day you may realize that what felt like abandonment was actually protection. What felt like delay was preparation. What felt like silence was God working quietly behind the scenes. Because God never forgets His promises. And He never forgets His children. Never. So if you are listening today and your heart feels weary, remember this truth. You may feel forgotten by people. You may feel forgotten by the world. You may even feel forgotten by your circumstances. But you are not forgotten by God. He remembers your name. He remembers your prayers. He remembers your tears. He remembers your story. And the God who remembers you is still writing your future. So keep walking. Keep trusting. Keep praying. Keep believing. Because even when you cannot see His hand, you can trust His heart. And if you remember nothing else from this message, remember this. God has not forgotten you. Not yesterday. Not today. Not for a single moment. And He never will.